My name is Maya Lin, and I am 32 years old. For most of my life, I have moved through the world with the quiet diligence of one of my own honeybees, focused on my work, largely unnoticed. Last Thursday, under the glittering skyline of the city, at a party designed to celebrate my brother, I was finally forced out of the hive. The confrontation that followed was not the sting they expected. It was the reveal of a honeycomb empire they never knew existed. The event was held in a rented penthouse event space, all glass and chrome, overlooking the city lights. It was the launch party for InnovateX, the latest in a long line of my brother Ethan's brilliantly named Hollow Chord Ventures. My father, a stern man who valued appearances above all else, was holding court by the bar, regaling investors with tales of Ethan's vision. My mother, a woman whose love was as conditional as a stock option, floated through the room, a perfect hostess. And at the center of it all was Ethan, my older brother, 35 years old and still playing the part of the boy genius. Ethan was a master of the pitch. He spoke in buzzwords: synergy, disruption, paradigm shift, and had a charisma that could sell ice in a blizzard. The fact that his last 3 startups had burned through hundreds of thousands of our parents' retirement savings was a detail conveniently omitted from the evening's narrative. After an hour of schmoozing, my father tapped a champagne flute for attention. "Friends, partners," he announced, his voice filled with manufactured pride. "Tonight, we are not just launching a company. We are launching the next chapter of a legacy." His gaze found Ethan, and he beamed. "My son, Ethan, is on the cusp of revolutionizing the digital media landscape. InnovateX is more than a name, it's a promise." A smattering of polite applause followed. I stood by a floor-to-ceiling window, watching the traffic flow like rivers of light below, feeling the familiar ache of invisibility. I knew my role in these family dramas: to be seen but not heard, a silent endorsement of the family's perfect image. My mother then glided over to me, her smile as bright and hard as a diamond. She took my hand, her perfectly manicured nails digging slightly into my skin. "And Maya," she said, her voice just loud enough to draw the attention of the nearby clusters of guests. "Our creative, earthy Maya. She is also making a key investment in her brother's future." Every head in our vicinity turned. I was dressed in a simple, dark green dress, feeling as organic and out of place as a wildflower in a hydroponic lab. Ethan joined them, placing an arm around my shoulder in a gesture that felt more like an assertion of ownership than affection. "Maya, my little bee charmer," he said with a condescending chuckle. "We're so proud of your little rooftop project. It's adorable. But it's time for it to graduate into something that helps the whole family." My father delivered the final, crushing blow, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "InnovateX needs a headquarters, a proper address to signal its importance. Your building, Maya, the one with your little garden on the roof. It's in the perfect up-and-coming district. You will sell it. The capital will give Ethan the runway he needs, and the sale will free you up from a hobby that has taken up far too much of your time." The air crackled with the unspoken threat. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a public declaration of eminent domain over my life. My little rooftop project wasn't a hobby. It was my home, my laboratory, my sanctuary, and the heart of a business I had bled for. "Sell that hobby rooftop of yours, Maya," my mother whispered, her voice a venomous hiss of sugar. "Or you can consider yourself cut off. No more family, no more support. You'll be on your own." The world seemed to mute, the party's chatter fading into a dull roar. I could almost hear the gentle hum of my bees, miles away in their rooftop haven. I saw the triumphant gleam in Ethan's eyes, the unyielding certainty in my parents' faces. They expected tears. They expected a quiet, resentful surrender. They had, after all, been conditioning me for it my entire life. But the woman they were speaking to was not the pliable girl they remembered. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my water. I looked past their expectant faces, my gaze drifting towards the magnificent spire of the Oakhaven Tower, the most prestigious new commercial building in the city. And I smiled. A small, serene smile that held a universe of secrets. It was a smile that utterly confused them. They thought they were caging a bee. They had no idea they were poking a bear. If you were me, what would you have done? Would you sacrifice your dream for a family that sees it as disposable? Or would you finally show them the true scale of what you've built? I would love to read your thoughts in the comments. To understand that smile, you must understand the silence it grew from. In the Lin family, Ethan was the broadcast, and I was the white noise. He was the flashy tech gadget unboxed on camera. I was the quiet, complex ecosystem that made the world work, unseen and unappreciated. This dynamic was cemented early. When Ethan won a city-wide coding competition in high school, my parents remortgaged the house to buy him the latest computer equipment. When I, a year later, won a national grant for young agricultural entrepreneurs with my plan for sustainable urban apiaries, my father patted me on the head and said, "That's sweet, honey. Maybe you can use the money to buy Ethan a new ergonomic chair for his desk." The dismissal was their primary tool. They didn't need to forbid my passion when they could simply suffocate it with indifference. My love for bees began as a child's wonder. Our grandfather kept a few hives at his country house, and I was mesmerized by their intricate society, their quiet, productive harmony. While Ethan was inside playing video games, I was outside, learning the dance of the bees. After my grandfather passed, he left me a small, run-down commercial building in a then, neglected part of the city. To my parents, it was a tax liability. To me, it was a promise. I used the money from my grant to renovate the top floor into a small apartment for myself, and turned the entire roof into a lush, thriving garden and apiary. The defining trauma, the moment that forged my quiet rebellion into tempered steel, happened when I was 24. I had spent 2 years perfecting my first signature honey, a lavender-infused blend from the thousands of lavender plants I grew on my roof. It was delicate, complex, and I was incredibly proud of it. I had just bottled my first major harvest, about 500 jars, which I planned to sell at a prestigious artisanal food market. It was my debut, my chance to turn my passion into a viable business. That weekend, Ethan decided to host a networking party for one of his now defunct startups. He needed a venue with an authentic, rustic vibe. Without asking me, he and his friends broke into my rooftop garden. They trampled the lavender beds, knocked over 2 of my hives, and used my jars of honey as party favors, handing them out to strangers. I discovered the devastation the next morning. The air was thick with the smell of spilled honey and dying bees. My work, my art, was gone. When I confronted my family sobbing, my mother's response was chillingly pragmatic. "Oh Maya, don't be so dramatic. It's just honey." Ethan was making important connections. "Your little project can wait. Family comes first." Ethan didn't even apologize. "Hey, people love the honey," he said with a shrug. "You should be thanking me for the exposure." That day, I didn't just lose a harvest. I lost the last shred of hope that they would ever see me or value my work. I cried until I had no tears left. Then, I cleaned up the mess, salvaged what I could, and made a silent promise to myself and my bees. I would never again depend on my family for anything. Not for approval, not for support, not even for recognition. I would build my world so far beyond their comprehension that their opinions would become irrelevant. The best revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be the sweet, undeniable taste of massive success. That incident was the catalyst. I rebuilt my apiaries, but this time, I built a fortress around my business. I got a part-time job at a local botanical garden to pay the bills, giving my family the impression I was drifting aimlessly. But every other waking hour was dedicated to my craft. I studied botany, chemistry, and the complex science of terroir in honey. My rooftop became a controlled ecosystem of rare and exotic flowers, allowing me to create honeys with flavor profiles that were completely unique. My breakthrough came not at a public market, but through a quiet, targeted strategy. I identified the top 10 chefs in the city, the culinary innovators, and sent each of them a small, unlabeled sample of my new creation, a smoky, complex honey infused with ghost peppers and aged in bourbon barrels. I included a simple, handwritten note with a burner phone number. A week later, I got a call. It was from the executive chef of Aura, a 3-Michelin-star restaurant. He didn't ask who I was or where I came from. He just said, "I don't know what this is, but I need it." Exclusively. That was the birth of Mellifera, my brand, named after the scientific name for the honeybee, Apis mellifera. I became a ghost in the culinary world. I worked through a third-party distributor, a trusted friend from college who handled all the logistics and invoicing. No one knew the face behind the brand. Mellifera became a word whispered among chefs, a secret ingredient, its rarity and mystery only adding to its allure. I lived a meticulously compartmentalized life. To my family, I was just Maya, the quirky younger sister in her late 20s and early 30s, still living in that rundown building, puttering around with her bees. They saw my simple, practical clothes and my lack of a corporate job as evidence of my gentle, unambitious failure. This narrative was comfortable for them. It made Ethan's chaotic, expensive endeavors seem, by comparison, like noble ambition. They never asked about the strange floral deliveries to my building or the sophisticated cooling equipment I had installed in my basement for storage. Their willful ignorance was my greatest asset. While Ethan was burning through their money, a VR-based real estate app, a subscription box for artisanal dog toys, a disastrous attempt to create a cryptocurrency for influencers, I was quietly building an empire. Mellifera products were now in dozens of high-end restaurants and luxury hotels across the country. I had expanded, leasing other unused rooftops in the city, creating a network of secret sky gardens. I invested my profits, buying the buildings that housed my apiaries, including the one I lived in. I was a landowner, a CEO, and a millionaire, all while my family thought I was barely scraping by. The years went on. My parents grew more financially strained, their faces etched with a permanent worry that they tried to hide behind forced smiles. The Vesper, their beautiful family home in the suburbs, was mortgaged to the hilt to fund Ethan's lifestyle and business failures. He had convinced them that his big break was just around the corner, and they clung to that hope because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. This desperation was the tinder for the explosion at the InnovateX launch party. They weren't just asking for my building. They were trying to liquidate my life to pay for their bad bets. They saw my one tangible asset, the building they knew about, as their last remaining resource, and me as the stubborn gatekeeper who needed to be put in her place for the good of the family. After my cryptic smile and silent departure from the party, I didn't go home. I went to my lawyer's office the next morning. The plan I had been holding in reserve for years was finally set in motion. Ethan's grand plan for InnovateX headquarters was an office in the Oakhaven Tower, the city's newest and most iconic skyscraper. He didn't have the money to lease it, of course, but he was using the prospect of leasing an office there to lure investors. It was the cornerstone of his entire illusion of success. He had been in negotiations for weeks with the building's management. What he didn't know was that I had been in negotiations with the building's owners. A week later, an emergency family meeting was called at my parents' house. The atmosphere was funereal. Ethan was pacing, his face pale and furious. My parents looked terrified. "Your fault." Ethan spat at me the moment I walked in. "This is all your fault. You and your selfish refusal to help." "What are you talking about, Ethan?" I asked calmly. "The Oakhaven deal? It's dead," he yelled. "They told me this morning the space is no longer available. An anchor tenant bought the entire commercial section of the building. All of it? My investors are pulling out. You've ruined me." My father turned to me, his face a mask of cold fury. "This is what happens when you put your own selfish hobbies before your family, Maya. Your brother's dream is destroyed because you wouldn't sell one little building." "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through their hysteria, "that's not entirely true." I placed a sleek, heavy folder on the polished dining room table. "Ethan's dream isn't destroyed because I wouldn't sell my building. It's destroyed because I bought his." I opened the folder. Inside was the press release, set to go out the next morning. The headline was simple: Mellifera Artisanal Foods announces new global headquarters at Oakhaven Tower. The silence that fell was so profound it felt like a physical weight. They stared at the paper, then at me, their minds struggling to connect the two realities. "Mellifera," my mother whispered, the name foreign on her lips. "What is Mellifera?" "It's my company," I said. "The one I've been running for the past 8 years. My cute, little hobby. We are the leading supplier of artisanal honey and botanicals to the high-end culinary industry in North America, and we needed a new headquarters, a flagship store, and a state-of-the-art rooftop conservatory. The Oakhaven Tower was perfect." I let the information sink in. I watched the dawning horror, the utter disbelief warring with the undeniable proof in front of them. Ethan sank into a chair, looking like all the air had been punched out of him. My father's face went from red to a ghostly white. "But the money," he stammered. "How?" From the adorable project you never once asked me about, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. From the business you told me to give up. From the passion you tried to extinguish. I built it myself, without a single dollar from you. I built it in the silence you left me in. The dam of their composure broke. The recriminations and disbelief turned into a desperate, clumsy attempt at reconciliation. Maya, sweetheart, my mother began, her voice trembling. We didn't know. Why didn't you tell us? We're so proud of you. Proud? I asked, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. You were proud of the idea of me selling my home to fund his failure. That's all you saw. Ethan, seeing a new potential lifeline, jumped up. Maya? Sis, this is incredible. We could be partners? Innovatex and Mellifera. Think of the synergy. It was almost pathetic. I looked at the three of them, these strangers who shared my blood but not my life, and I felt nothing but a vast empty distance. There will be no partnership, I said, my voice final. I am not your safety net. I am not your bank. I am not the solution to your problems. I turned to my parents. The Vesper. I know it's in foreclosure. I will buy the debt from the bank. You can live there for the rest of your lives. I will not have you homeless. But that is the last thing you will ever receive from me. We are done. I picked up my folder and walked out of the house, leaving them in the ruins of the world they had built. I didn't look back. The aftermath was a quiet, karmic unraveling, a story told in whispers around the city. The press release about Mellifera's acquisition of the Oakhaven space was a huge business story. My face, the face of the mysterious founder, was suddenly everywhere. The story of the quiet beekeeper who built a multi-million-dollar empire was intoxicating. I was no longer invisible. For Ethan, the public revelation of my success was the final nail in his coffin. His narrative of being the family's great hope was shattered. His investors sued him for misrepresentation. The tech blogs that once fawned over him now wrote scathing articles about his long history of failures. He was exposed as a charlatan, a man who sold dreams he had no ability to build. He had to declare bankruptcy and move to a small apartment, taking a low-level marketing job. The tech guru was now just another cog in the machine. My parents' fate was a quieter, more insidious punishment. They lived in their beautiful home, a gilded cage now owned by the daughter they had cast aside. Their social circle, which revolved around wealth and success, slowly abandoned them. They were the parents of the failed son, living on the charity of the successful daughter they had wronged. Their pride, the bedrock of their existence, was eroded day by day. My mother stopped hosting parties. My father stopped playing golf at the country club. They were haunted by the ghost of the success they had failed to recognize in their own home. They would call, leaving rambling, tearful messages. They spoke of regret, of making mistakes, of wanting their family back. But I knew their regret was not for how they had treated me, but for what my success could have done for them had they been on the right side of it. I maintained my boundary. I was polite, but distant. I was a dutiful daughter, not a loving one. That part of me had withered and died in a trampled rooftop garden long ago. My life, on the other hand, had just begun to bloom. The Mellifera headquarters at the Oakhaven Tower became a landmark. The rooftop conservatory was a stunning vertical farm, a testament to sustainable urban agriculture. The flagship store on the ground floor was a temple to the art of the bee. I started a foundation to support young female entrepreneurs in unconventional fields, ensuring that other quiet girls with big dreams would have the support I never did. I found my family not in blood, but in shared passion and mutual respect. Among my team, my fellow artisans, and the chefs who had believed in my product when it was just an anonymous sample, I was no longer just Maya Lin, the quiet sister. I was Maya Lin, the founder of Mellifera, a woman who had built an empire not of glass and steel, but of flowers and honey and the indomitable, quiet power of a dream they couldn't kill. Sometimes, from my office on the 50th floor, I look out over the city. I can see the distant suburbs where my parents live, and the downtown district where my brother struggles. I feel no triumph, no anger. Just a profound sense of peace. They taught me the most important lesson of all, that the world may not see your value, but that doesn't make it any less real. Your job is not to convince them. It's to build your own hive, tend to your own garden, and make your own sweet, undeniable success. Thank you for listening to my story. It is a reminder that the most powerful forces in the world are often the quietest. Please, share your own story of a passion that others underestimated. Your story matters, and it deserves to be heard.